Have you ever stood at a TSA checkpoint, shoes half off, bag on the belt, heart racing, and thought, there has to be a better way to do this? Most seniors feel that exact same thing every single time they fly. And here's what nobody at the airport is going to tell you. There is a better way. These accommodations exist, they are real, and the airlines and TSA are not exactly lining up to put them in a brochure. Listen carefully, because what I'm about to share could be the difference between walking off a flight feeling okay and walking off completely wiped out. Or worse, having your medication confiscated at a checkpoint you didn't even know was an issue. For anyone traveling over 65, even one of these perks could save you serious time, money, and stress. Make sure you stay until number 6, because that one catches almost everyone off guard, and it involves your travel companion. Before we get into it, if this is the kind of information you want before every trip, hit subscribe right now, because trust me, they are not going to hand you this at the check-in counter. Number 1. Your liquid medication does not have to follow the 3.4-ounce rule, but only if you know what to say. Here is a story that happens more than you'd think. A woman in her early 70s, traveling from Phoenix to visit her grandchildren, had a liquid nutritional supplement she'd been taking every single day for 3 years. It was over 3.4 ounces. The TSA agent saw it, pulled it out, and told her it had to go. She didn't know she could have kept it. She didn't know she needed to say anything at all. The screening became much more complicated than it needed to be, and by the time it was resolved, she had missed her boarding group and started the trip already exhausted. The truth is, medically necessary liquids are exempt from the standard 3.4-ounce limit under TSA policy. Insulin, liquid prescription medication, liquid supplements your doctor has recommended. These can travel in larger amounts. But here is the critical part. You have to separate them from your bag before screening and verbally declare them to the agent. Just say these words: I have medically necessary liquids that need to be declared. That's it. You can also print TSA's medical liquids policy page from their official website and carry it with you if you want backup. Don't assume the agent will ask. You have to speak first. Number 2. A dedicated medical bag for temperature-sensitive medication is treated differently if you label it. If you travel with insulin or any medication that needs to stay cold, a small, separate, cooler bag specifically for that medication is generally treated as a medical item and not counted against your standard carry-on allowance on U.S. domestic airlines. A simple handwritten tag that says medical, insulin, or medical supplies on the outside of the bag communicates to agents immediately what they're looking at. It reduces delays. It helps agents quickly identify the contents as medical supplies before screening even begins. It sets the right expectation before you even reach the belt. And here's one most people never think to ask. Once you're on the plane, if you need to keep that medication cool during a long flight, ask a flight attendant for ice. They cannot store your medication in a galley refrigerator. That's a firm no, but they may be able to provide ice depending on availability, so it is always worth asking politely. You just have to ask. Most people sit in silence and worry. Don't do that. Number 3. There is a phrase that protects your privacy at the security belt, and almost nobody uses it. If you travel with a CPAP machine, insulin pump, ostomy supplies, or any medical device, you do not have to unpack everything and display it for a line of strangers to see. When you put your bag on the belt, say clearly to the nearest agent, there are medically necessary items in this bag. That phrase helps explain the contents of the bag before screening begins. It doesn't guarantee nothing gets inspected. They may still need to check. But it communicates your situation professionally and often results in far less unnecessary rummaging. Know the phrase? Use it every time. Number 4. If you have a pacemaker or metal implant, you have screening options and a card that changes everything. This one matters more than most people realize. The TSA offers a free medical notification card. You can download and print it directly from tsa.gov. That allows you to discreetly communicate your implant or medical condition to an agent before screening even begins. No announcements. No explaining yourself loudly. Just hand the card over. And if you have a pacemaker and you are not comfortable going through the standard body scanner, you are within your rights to request a manual pat-down instead. The scanner itself is generally considered safe for pacemakers by most manufacturers, but your comfort and your peace of mind matter. Simply say, "I have a cardiac implant and I'd prefer a manual screening, please." A respectful request goes a long way. Number 5, you may not have to take your shoes off, and if you are 75 or older, TSA says so directly. Taking shoes off sounds minor until your balance isn't what it used to be, or your knees make crouching on a hard airport floor genuinely painful. Here's something most people don't know. TSA has an official policy that passengers 75 and older may leave their shoes on during standard screening. That's not a rumor. It's on TSA's own website. If you are in that age group, you can simply say, "I'm 75. Am I able to keep my shoes on?" And in most cases, the answer is yes. If you are between 65 and 74, the policy doesn't automatically apply, but it is still worth asking. If removing your shoes is difficult due to a mobility issue or balance concern, tell the agent directly, "Removing my shoes is difficult for me. Is an alternative screening option available?" Depending on the technology and use at that checkpoint, you may still be offered a workable alternative. Either way, speak up. Most people suffered through it in silence when they didn't have to. Before we go further, if any of this has been useful to you so far, drop a 1 in the comments right now. It takes 1 second and it tells me this is worth making more of. And stay with me, because tip number 8 is the one gate agents are least likely to bring up on their own, and it protects the medical equipment you absolutely cannot afford to lose in a cargo hold. Number 6, a family member can escort you all the way to the gate, even if they don't have a ticket. Most people have no idea this exists. This one right here is why I told you to stay until number 6. If navigating a large airport, long corridors, multiple terminals, confusing signage feels overwhelming, and you need a family member or friend to walk you to the gate, many U.S. airports will issue what's called a gate pass to a non-ticketed escort. You request this at the check-in counter, not at the gate, not at security. Walk up to the check-in agent and say, "I have a mobility concern and I need a family member to escort me to the gate." Is it possible to issue a gate pass for them? The approval depends on the airport and TSA discretion, but this is a real established process. It happens regularly. People just don't ask because they don't know to ask. Now you know. Number 7, let the airline know your companion needs to stay with you. And say it early. If you are traveling with a spouse, caregiver, or family member, one of the simplest things you can do is tell airline staff clearly, at check-in and again at the gate, that you need to remain together throughout the boarding process. This sounds obvious, but most people assume the airline will figure it out on their own, and then they end up separated at the gate while one person is being wheeled down the jetway and the other is left standing in a different boarding group, wondering what happened. You don't need special language for this. Just say, "I'm traveling with a companion and I need us to stay together during boarding and assistance. Can you please make a note of that?" The earlier you communicate it, the more time staff have to coordinate. Check-in is the best moment. Gate is the second chance. Don't wait until the last minute and hope it works out. Number 8, medical equipment deserves overhead bin space, and you can board first to secure it. There are few things more stressful on a flight than watching the overhead bins fill up while you are still waiting to board. Knowing your CPAP or your back brace or your mobility aid is in your hand and has nowhere to go. Gate agents will sometimes try to check medical equipment, and once it goes below the plane, the temperature, handling, and delay risks go up. You do not have to let that happen. Before general boarding starts, go to the gate agent and say, "I'm traveling with essential medical equipment that must remain in the cabin with me. May I pre-board to ensure there is overhead space?" Gate agents approve this regularly. It's a straightforward request, and it protects equipment that genuinely cannot be tossed in a cargo hold. Here's what I want you to take away from all of this. The airport system moves fast, and it was not exactly designed with us in mind. But every single one of these accommodations is real. They exist. They are available to you. The only thing standing between you and a calmer, more dignified travel experience is knowing what to ask for and being willing to ask for it. Before you go, I want to ask you something quick. Type 1 in the comments if this video was useful to you. Type 0 if it missed the mark. I genuinely want to know so I can do better. And if you want to go one step further, tell me how old you are and which tip surprised you the most. I read every single comment, and so does this community. If someone you care about is flying soon and doesn't know any of this, send them this video right now. One of these tips could be the difference between a smooth trip and a really stressful one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Every week we put out information like this that the airlines and airports count on you not knowing. Safe travels.